Thank you so much for staying with us for Midday D Time. Addie certainly seems pleased with the improvement to her eyesight, and her mom is relieved too that her baby daughter can see. Joining us this afternoon is Dr. Patrick Stow of West Georgia Eye Care. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
You know, I read this morning again, and I talked with Addie's mom about it, that kids sometimes don't realize that the world they're looking at is fuzzy.
Right.
And how often do you run into that?
All the time. You know, I think the key is kids don't know what they're supposed to see and what they're not supposed to be able to see. And a lot of times the biggest problems in kids are identified during an eye exam, because if you're born that way and you've always been that way, you just wouldn't know any different. So
now, you may know, my kids are all grown. I don't remember, was that mandatory? They had eye exams.
So yeah, so I would say that there is a little bit of discrepancy there between what the pediatric offices do and what the American Optometric Association recommends. So the pediatrician generally will do a routine screening on kids, but the American Optometric Association recommends that everybody across the board between 6 and 12 months really should have their first eye exam. So usually by the time parents are thinking about it, it's well past that time.
Yeah, I was telling Melissa, I said my daughter would scoot up to the television and I would say, you might have an eye problem, I better check it out. She did have an eye problem.
Right. So
tell me, what is myopia?
So myopia is the medical term for nearsightedness, and basically it's when the distance vision is fuzzy, but you can see up close, and ultimately it's a result of the length of the eyeball relative to the curvature of the front of the eye. So if the eyeball is too long or the surface of the eye is too steep and the light is focused too strongly, the image is focused in front of where it's supposed to be focused, and that makes the distance fuzzy.
I was also reading earlier that being on your device can lengthen and worsen it.
That's right. So there is an epidemic now of myopia, and we think it's in part because people are reading and looking at things up close so much more now. So you know, probably about 10 years or so ago, about 30% of the population in North America was nearsighted, and that's just gradually increasing, and the projections say that almost 60% of the people will be nearsighted by 2050. So it definitely has something to do with not just our genetics, but what we're doing day to day. It's both environmental and genetic.
Now, I have a picture of an eye, a very large eye.
Oh, wow, yes, it is.
Now tell me what's happening when light enters the eye of someone who has myopia.
Yeah, and from the front of the eye, it's kind of hard to really explain. So what we're talking about is from the front of the head to the back of your head, right? So this is the front of the eyeball, so it enters through the pupil, and somebody who is nearsighted, their eyeball from the front part of their eyeball to the back part of their eyeball is too long, and the image is focused in front of where it's supposed to be focused, and that's what makes things fuzzy for people. It's just not focused on the back of the retina, on the macula, and so the vision is fuzzy.
Now describe what that contact does.
So what's interesting is forever and ever and ever, when people were nearsighted, all you could do was say, hey, you're nearsighted and you need some glasses, and then next year the kid would come back and they'd be more nearsighted, and the next year they'd come back and they'd be more nearsighted. And so frequently you'd have parents ask, well, is there anything that we can do to slow this down, right? And wearing glasses and wearing regular contact lenses really doesn't do anything. It helps you to see, but it certainly doesn't slow the progression of that.
This is great information, because you're talking to me.
Yeah.
You're talking to me.
That's right.
I need some help, Doc.
That's right. That's right. So this is all that what happens during the period of growth. So basically from birth to adolescence, when the growth kind of slows down and through to maturity. What the first ever FDA approved treatment for myopia control was made available about 3 or 4 years ago, 3 years ago now, I think. It's a contact lens called the MySight.
MySight.
And Cooper Vision is the company that makes this contact lens.
Go ahead. He wants to show us his eye.
I'll show you. Yeah. Well, I've got the
Oh,
contact
you've
lens
got the
here.
contact,
This is, and I don't mean to be a shill for the company that makes it. I certainly don't have a stake in it one way or another, but I think it's awesome that it's available.
That it works.
That's right. That's right. So the idea is it corrects peripheral blur. So we're always worried about making the central image nice and clear, but we don't really correct for the image on the periphery of the retina, and that's what these contact lenses do. They draw the image to within the eye, and we think that that's what slows down that progression of that nearsightedness.
So this is specifically for children?
It is specifically for children, yeah. So these contact lenses have FDA approval for kids starting as young as 9 years old. And so they have the added benefit of actually slowing the progression of nearsightedness. So, you know, with contact lenses come the risk of infections and all kinds of horrible things that can happen.
So they have to have good home care.
Absolutely.
You got to have a mom who's going to say, not just tell you to go do it. I'm coming in there and I'm going to watch you do it.
Absolutely,
Yes,
absolutely. And so that's why these are daily replacement contacts. You throw them away, that limits the risk of infection. So we do everything that we can to kind of reduce that risk of infection. But the fact that they slow down the progression of nearsightedness, and the fact that if you are highly nearsighted increases your risk of blindness ultimately later on in life.
That was my question. If we don't get a hold of this, and a lot of kids, you may tell them to get off those devices, but
oh, it's not happening.
But
right?
It's not going to happen.
It's not happening.
So we have to slow it down. What
That's
is
right.
the worst case scenario if we don't do something?
Oh my goodness. Well, you know, I think we can get dramatic pretty quickly, but you know, the more nearsighted you are, ultimately the higher the risk is of blindness, retinal detachments, myopic macular degeneration, certain forms of glaucoma. All have a higher risk later on in life if you are more nearsighted. So that risk goes up if you're -3, -6, -9, -12. The more nearsighted you are, the higher the lifetime risk that's going to happen.
Okay, I'm going to fire off a couple of questions. I think we have less than a minute here. We get out at 57:11. We've got about a minute. Okay. Are there some kids who should not get them because they may not be mature enough?
I think absolutely. That is certainly the case. And that's a consideration when we talk to the parents about whether or not they're a good candidate for these. And there are alternatives. There's eye drops that can be used that slow the progression of nearsightedness. Not FDA approved for that purpose, so they're what we consider an off-label treatment, but they are an alternative.
Okay, does insurance cover this?
Yeah, so insurance covers it to the extent that they cover any contacts, but they don't cover it extra. So typically most vision insurances will cover maybe $100, $150 towards the contact lenses, and the cost on these varies for sure, but you're probably looking at about $100 a month for this particular contact. So it's not inexpensive for sure. That's another big factor holding people back.
Thank you so much for being with us. What a conversation today, and we want you to join us tomorrow on midday D time.